Super BS. Super BS. Super BS. Super BS. Super BS. Super BS.
All right, hey everyone, this is Donna with Super BS, and we're going to be doing a little interview today with David Amador of Upfall Studios. Anyone that's checked out the podcast in the last couple of weeks knows that I personally have been talking a lot about Quest of Dungeons. So we figured we'd reach out to David and see if we can set up an interview, and we were able to get this working. So without further ado, David, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing fine, thank you. Thanks for having me on the show. How are you today?
Yeah, of course. Doing pretty good. It's morning here, so I'm assuming it's like late afternoon or early evening there, right?
Yeah, it's almost 6 p.m. over here, so it's a bit of, it's laggy.
Yeah. Let everyone know where you're coming from right now.
I'm from Portugal. I'm in Lisbon right now.
Excellent. Okay, so first question. So how long have you been making games for?
Oh, so probably over 10 years now, but just recently as an independent. So since 2010 as an independent developer, but I've been making games. I joined the company back in 2006. So it's been over 10 years now working on games, either independent or as in the company. I had a gap a couple of years ago, but I always tried to work on stuff as hobby, so I never quite stopped, but there was a gap between like commercial released game, actually releasing games.
Sure. So when you were working for so Quest of Dungeons obviously came out in 2014, I believe, right?
Yes, that's right.
Was the original. So what other games have you worked on that are out currently?
So none of the I don't think none of my past games are on sale anymore because of several reasons. So I worked on the first commercial game I made as an independent developer was a game called Visari. It's a weird name, but it was a game for Windows and actually Xbox 360 with the Xbox Indie Developers program.
Yeah.
So that was the first game. That was back in 2010-11. But that game isn't selling anymore because, the Indie Partner Program ended for the Creators Club.
Sure.
That ended. So on PC, I don't have it on any stores as well. After that, I made a couple mobile games, and unfortunately, with the recent push from Apple to drop all 32-bit applications, I don't know if you're aware of that, it wasn't sustainable to me to update them all. So they got dropped recently. So all of them outside Quest of Dungeons, because that one is still actively selling. The other ones wasn't worth me. So people that bought the game still have it, but I'm not selling them anymore. I made a couple mobile games, like casual games. When the mobile market exploded, that was the thing that I tried to work on.
Yeah, I got you. That's been like a thing for a long time. They've been slowly phasing out 32-bit and all that such.
Yeah.
So I guess my next question would be, so tell me a little bit about the development of Quest of Dungeons. When that started, how long it took. You're a one-man team on that, right?
Yeah, I am, but I didn't do everything, like 100% of everything made by me. That's not the case. But I worked as a solo developer, so I got someone else to do the sprite, like the pixel art sprites. I made some of them as well. I made the sound effects, but I didn't do the music. So I got someone else to do it. But it was more on the freelance, so I would ask something, they would work on it, and I don't think anyone got into the game design itself. So like, oh, so how is this gonna fit into the game? So it was mostly I need this. So I was working solo on the project. I started Quest of Dungeons probably in 2012, like a small experiment on a game jam that is called, it still exists, 7-Day Roguelike, where you have to build a roguelike in 7 days. So that was the main. I want to do this. That was the main thing. I want to work on this. But it went a bit back and forth, so I wasn't really sure if I wanted to continue. But in 2013, I jumped. Okay, so I'm gonna work on this not full time. I had a day job, so I'm gonna work on this. This is gonna be my main project. I want to finish this. And the game started just for a mobile game. It started like, I want to do again another mobile game because it was easier to sell. Back then we couldn't.
Sure.
I couldn't access to Steam, for example, back then. So the whole Steam Direct open. It's a recent thing. So I worked on a simple roguelike for mobile. But before release, this was near the end of 2013. The testers started to show interest on a desktop version, like with a mouse and all that keyboard. Yeah. And I made it, and I sent it to Steam. Back then, it was
Greenlight.
Greenlight, yeah. It was Greenlight, but it was still early on, so it was we still had we still needed a bunch of votes and all of that. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because when I placed the game there, it got approved by Valve very quickly. And that was really the main... everyone that got interested in the game was because of Steam Greenlight, because I didn't have many people following it before. It was just... I released the trailer for the game. I set up the Greenlight page, and all of a sudden, people were showing, the game looks cool. And I had the game very near the end. I was wrapping up. So I released it in 2014. It wasn't really that much. It just happened, kind of blind luck, I guess, with work. But it was, I think, the timing and I don't know, maybe the game itself.
Yeah. That's cool. So did, well, let's talk about, so in the development of it, do you come from a background of, do you play a lot of roguelikes? I mean, was that something that you have a lot of experience with? Was it a genre that you just kind of jumped into? Like you talked about, there was that game jam. So, No,
to be honest, not really. I got into roguelikes probably after 2011, when we started getting... I didn't even kind of know the genre. I've heard of it, but I never played any of the old ones until then, like Rogue and Adam and all NetHack. So I got interested, and this is maybe weird, but I got interested on a genre because of the procedural nature. From a developer perspective, that sounds great because you don't have a lot of people working with you. So that was let me try this. So when I heard about the game jam, it was like, let me try and make something procedural and see how that works. But while working on that, I started playing a lot of games. Like, and back then I remember Dungeons of Dreadmore was really big. Mm-hmm. It came out and everyone was talking about. So I played that game. I think it's really good. And I played a couple of mobile ones as well, like Seven Rogues, 17 Rogues, something like that.
Sure.
I played a couple of them, so I didn't. It's recent, so I got into the genre very quickly, but very recently. I've been playing games since the Super Nintendo, but I never got into. I played RPGs, but never roguelikes. So it was.
Yeah. That's the same for me, actually. I've watched playthroughs of roguelikes, but I didn't have a lot of understanding how the genre worked, actually until really recently. So I've played some roguelites, Rogue Legacy, some of the games that have those that have those roguelike features, but aren't exactly the same. But I had never really quite understood. I'd watched playthroughs of like Crypt of the Necrodancer and things like that, but I didn't quite get it. But I happened to pick up Quest of Dungeons on Switch, and I couldn't put it down for I've been playing it for a little while now. So it's funny. Yeah, I've been playing games since the Super Nintendo era as well. I'm almost 30, and this is my first roguelike. But I'm really, really enjoying your game. So with that being said, what kind of games did you grow up playing? I know you obviously said Super Nintendo RPGs. To me, that makes me think of things like Final Fantasy, things like that, Zelda. Those are the things I grew up playing, of course. But how about for you? What are some of your favorite games that you grew up playing?
Yeah, I grew up playing all of the, Final Fantasy, Zelda, Super Mario World. That's usually my as platformers go. The old ones, Super Mario World. Yeah. Is like I can replay it over and over. It's always
forever,
fun to play. Yeah. But I grew up playing like. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was gonna say, yeah, those games are infinitely replayable. They're just fantastically made.
Yeah, and you know the levels, they never change, but it's always fun. It's like that fun factor. It doesn't have the graphics. It doesn't nowadays, but it's always fun to play. So also stuff like, I don't know, Neverwinter Nights and Dungeon Siege, Diablo. I grew up playing a lot of those Fallout, the old ones like 1 and 2.
Yeah.
I grew up playing all those games, so I was always into RPGs and adventure games.
Yeah, I played Neverwinter Nights when I was a kid as well. I really enjoyed that game. I've played the original Fallouts, but not until after playing the modern one. So once Fallout 3 came out, I think was when I rediscovered kind of like, I'm going to go back and play Fallout 1 and 2.
Yeah.
It's quite another different. One of those games. Yeah, it's quite different. But they're still great. Another game from that era that I really love is a game called Arcanum. Did you ever come across that one?
I have, but I never played it that much. It was a friend of mine had it, so I saw it at his house, but I never got around to dig in.
It's a very unique game. It's similar in the way that there's no other game like Planescape Torment.
Oh yeah, that's a good one as well.
There's no other game like Arcanum because it's set in this sort of. It's technically, I guess it would technically be steampunk, but it's not really what you typically associate. It's a little bit less cartoony, and it's a little bit more on the like frontier side instead of the Victorian era kind of deal.
Yeah.
So it kind of has like a very Wild West feel with railroads, and it has one of the best video game soundtracks. The whole thing is like a string quartet, and I listen to that soundtrack all the time still. 15 years later or whatever, how long ago it came out.
Yeah, even the older games had awesome soundtracks. Like, the graphics are obviously limited by hardware, but the sounds, after a while, weren't. And some of them, like Final Fantasy, has amazing soundtracks still today.
Yeah, I actually have a huge collection of video game soundtracks. I have every Final Fantasy soundtrack just about. And yeah, I've been listening to those since I was a kid. I studied music in school, and one of the reasons I got really into music as a kid was because of those Final Fantasy soundtracks, the Secret of Mana soundtrack, the Chrono Trigger soundtrack, those kind of things had a huge effect on me growing up. Yeah, and I think there's something to say too, though, with even though the graphics are limited, I think there's a lot of personality in the design of it,
Yeah, there are. Even the early 3D RPGs like Final Fantasy VII isn't fully 3D, but I don't know, 9 I think.
Yeah, polygonal. Yeah. Oh yeah, 9.
Even those had like that touch. It's very low poly, but it has that charm to it.
Yeah, I think personally, I attribute a lot of that to the people working on that. you know that a lot of those people aren't really there making those games anymore. I don't know if you ever had a chance to play any of the Mistwalker games. I always recommend these. Blue Dragon.
The original one, yes.
What was that?
The original one, yeah.
Yeah, Blue Dragon and Lost Odyssey on Xbox 360. These were made by the guy that invented Final Fantasy. He left Square and started his own company and put out these two RPGs that are really filled with kind of that whimsy that a lot of the older ones are known for.
Yeah.
And I really think that's because, you know, it has the same composer doing the music. It has him doing the directing and the story and all this kind of stuff. And so I think a lot of times it attributes to the team making the game, you know. But even with your game, Quest of Dungeons, you know, it's obviously has a very retro style to it on a graphic perspective, but it's got a lot of personality, you know, versus, you know, kind of just any, you know, particular high profile release. You know, the graphics alone don't really make a lot of games stand out to me. It's kind of the whole aesthetic that goes with it. But yeah, so you tried making a roguelike. An interesting thing that I found was with the Switch version, or with, I don't remember if this was the PC version that originally did this, but at some point you added in the Crypt of the Necrodancer character, correct?
Yeah, correct.
So how did that come about?
So that was the original release didn't have it, but when I got the first console, so the first console release was for Xbox One. So that Microsoft liked the game and they wanted, they approved it. And one of the things that I got into my mind was I have to like make a deluxe version or expand the game a little bit. Like I didn't want it to make just a port. Also because I had to redo all the UI and for the controller, so
sure.
I got into like changing, and one of the things was adding more classes. I got around to some of the ideas that I dropped early on, but none of them was really that great. So one day I was chatting with a friend, like I was like, oh man, it just appeared like. I wanted to like add a cameo from another game, and I was playing back then. I was really into Crypt of the Necrodancer, so I just sent an email to Ryan from the developer of Crypt of the Necrodancer, like a random like, here's my game. I wanted to do this. Like, what do you think about it? And he said yes. It was just as simple as that. It was really cool actually, because I went a bit back and forth I wanted to make her look like the sprites in the original game, but not with my own style, you know, like it had to fit Quest of Dungeons. So we went a little bit like we had a couple of characters like concepts that weren't that great, but we set up on the final one that's on the game, and that was it. So I added to the Xbox version, and after that it's on every version that I updated after that.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun seeing that kind of collaboration where you're able to basically add a character from another game as sort of like a fun, it kind of creates a sense of community, I guess, with roguelike games. And it sounds like there is. It sounds like there is. There's obviously like a big, speed run and streaming of all these kind of games as well. There's always like a niche for everything. But yeah, so yeah, it's great. And anything else that you felt like, did anything change drastically during the development? Obviously you talked about certain ideas that you dropped at one point and then revisited when you put it on Xbox.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that, was either too much or too little that ideas that you sort of put to the side?
One of them that was too big and didn't fit is one of the most requested ones, that a co-op mode.
Yeah,
I
that
don't
would
know.
be fun.
I don't really know why. Well, I can see why, but usually for this type of game, it's usually single-player games. But it's one of the most requested features, and I have to say that I tried it. I really tried, but it doesn't work for this one, for my game.
Yeah, that would be. I'm trying to think of how that would work, because obviously everything's turn-based technically. So, yeah, that would definitely interrupt probably the flow of the game.
It does.
It's an interesting concept.
I tried it because whenever people tell me this, usually it's like, okay, so I play my turn and then I wait. And in our minds, it's okay, so I'll wait. But when you're actually playing, I tried it. The last time I tried was for the Switch version because of the Joy-Cons. I was like, okay, so you always have 2 controllers. This is the ideal setup. And I tried. I have a prototype somewhere with 2 characters, but it's super boring. Because if you're coordinating with the other player, it kind of works, but there's always something. Either the inventory, or picking up stuff, or battling a boss, or you want to move to a room. It doesn't really work with the turn-based. So I dropped it. It was too big, it doesn't fit my game.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's interesting. That makes a lot of sense. I can imagine it sounds like a great idea, but even though your game is turn-based, it also moves so quickly in a sense. It almost feels like a live action sort of game until you decide to take a break to pause and like strategize, which which happens. When I play, I'm oftentimes like running through different rooms almost seamlessly, but then I'll come into a room and find a bunch of monsters that I'm not quite prepared for, and I'll have to pause for a second and think about what I'm about to do. Which is really fun. So do you have any so I guess now are you working on anything new?
Yeah, I'm starting to work on some ideas, some stuff that has been in my mind, or some stupid ideas that I want to just try and see if they work, like a prototype. I still don't have any what's the word? I'm still not set on an idea. I'm just trying stuff. It's not that I don't want to say like it's a secret, but I'm still too much in the okay. Does this work? I actually dropped a couple of weeks ago an idea that I had, and it really doesn't work. So yeah, I'm working on new stuff, but it's still early to announce it.
It's no problem.
Yeah, so eventually I'll start. It's probably something on the RPG kind of. It will have some sort of RPG traits to it. It's like I like that stuff, even if it's a whole different. I don't know. For example, a platformer game can have RPG elements. I like that part. So
yeah, definitely. Me too. I'm always a fan of RPG elements in other styled games. When you start so what are you primarily developing in when you develop your games?
The technology.
Yeah.
So like now I'm using it's a custom engine made in C++, and so it's not really something.
It's not like Game Maker essentially.
No.
Or
it's all custom. It's all custom built on all the platforms right now. Yes, so it takes a little bit more time because I have to make the ports. But I'm using my. It's actually been the technology that I used for all the games that I made in the past, so I just keep improving it. So it's C++ and then whatever the platform uses for.
Yeah. So when you start, whether it was, obviously I understand how you started Quest of Dungeons, but with these new ideas that you're toying around with, how do you start into that? Do you come up, for me, I don't really have any game development experience, but in times past, friends of mine that are interested in that, we've like tried to develop our own ideas. So for me, not having much of the programming side of experience, I usually start thinking with things like, oh, like what kind of world do I want this to be? What kind of like characters do I want to have? What kind of, visual sound and sound feel do I want to have? Where do you start with your ideas? Are you starting with concepts like what if I played this kind of game, or what if it, I guess that's my question.
Yeah, it's usually something like that. I try to do some sketches on paper is great. Even for most games you can use paper. If it's a puzzle game, even better, because you can do several trials in paper. But usually it's something in the lines of I played a certain game that I like, a genre or something, and I feel like I could do something else or something a bit different, or something that I didn't quite like, and I feel like, for example, for Quest of Dungeons, one of the things was that I felt some of them were too slow, or the ones that were fast enough, like real-time games, didn't have the depth that the other ones had. So I tried to like mix something new, make it more for me to play, something that I usually that's the starting point, something that I want to play, not something that I feel like will sell, because it doesn't sell as well, so might as well work on something that you like.
Definitely. That's a huge, even with any creative industry, like I said, I'm a musician, so that's a big deal. It's like, do the thing you love, because you have no way to know what kind of success you're going to get either way. So you might as well do something you're proud of.
And also you mentioned the programming and all that. Usually it's better to not just start right away to like you have an idea and start coding or developing the assets right away. Sketching up and doing a sort of game, not doing a game design document with all the specs, but paper is great. Like you put up your ideas on paper, do a couple sketches, try to find games that fit your vision. Like for getting an idea, sometimes it's hard to imagine, right? If it's 2D or 3D, you want to imagine how things are going to fit in the world. So finding references in other games for inspiration, it helps a lot, because you can get an idea. And even when you want to, like, I don't know, get an artist and tell them, so I need something, I need this, and your reference can be like this game. I don't want that game to look like that game, but I want to, just give a guideline. Unless you're a really good artist yourself, and you can do that, but it helps to, like, getting reference from other games. It's not a big deal. It's not a problem. And the mechanics are usually the hard part, because you have to prototype. But that's after you get a couple of concepts on paper. I'm not saying the characters, but the mechanics. Like, what's your game about? What do you do in your game? The story is not something that you need to put right away. Yeah,
that's great. All right, so just as we're kind of wrapping up a little bit. What are you playing any games currently, or in your spare time? Are you finding anything that's come out recently, or just a game that's, even if it's old, that you're just kind of currently really enjoying?
I'm gonna let me see. The last game that I was playing, I've been replaying Celeste. It's really my type of game, a platformer. Let me see. That one I finished a couple of.
Yeah, our co-host Brank, he was also the one in the email thread when we were communicating this week. He really fell in love with that game. I haven't had a chance to play it myself yet, but it's on my wish list. So looking forward to getting around to it. You should try it.
It's really, really good. Also, a new game that came out. I'm gonna mention it. It's called Octahedron. It came out last week, I think.
Oh yeah, I think I've heard of that.
And from you have like this time you build your own platform, so you're jumping around, and then you press a button, and a platform comes beneath you. So you can it's a different twist to the platformers, and the soundtrack is really good. So that's another one that if people want to check it.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So then my last question was going to be: Do you have any advice for people that are looking to pursue a career in video games, whether it's at a professional setting or just like as a hobby or as a one man if they're getting started?
Start working as soon as possible. And I know it's hard because where do I start? Like if you can join a game jam locally, like in person, there's tons of them all over the world. Do that. Even if you don't have like any specific, it helps if you know how to draw a little bit or to code. And you just join a team and just 48 hours that can either go very well or very wrong. It can happen, but even the wrong is a learning curve. When I say wrong is you don't end up finishing the game in the 48 hours.
Sure.
Not wrong and all hell breaks loose. Like, oh, you end up, it happened to me a lot. Like the first ones, I never finished them, but it's a learning experience and it's a starting point. Most people can't access, like, you're not going to join a course. If you can do that, like join a course or go to school to study that. But if you wanted to, anyone can start working on games if they have a computer and internet. Just there's tons of tutorials online, YouTube, and there's tools like Game Maker and Unity and Unreal. It's easier to get into and start putting stuff on screen and getting excited about game development. Yeah, that's about it. It's more complicated than this, but starting is usually what I say, because I know a lot of people that keep saying to me, oh, I want to make games someday. Just start making games. The first ones won't be that great. The next ones will be better. That's how if you ask any top developer that we know, all of them started by just doing something like a Pong or a Pac-Man or a clone.
Sure.
Yeah, do a Pong clone. Just the first, do a clone. It's not as easy as people think. Oh, that's just 2 bars and it's not as easy as people think. So just clone Pong and go from there.
I like that. Clone Pong. Go from there. That's great. Well, okay, so that's going to be it for today. Thank you so much, David, for taking time to chat with us.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll email you when the episode goes up and send you a link to it. But yeah, all right. So thank you, everyone that's had a chance to listen. Again, Quest of Dungeons is currently available on. I believe it's on Xbox One. It's on Steam. It's still on mobile, correct?
Yeah, it's still on mobile.
That's the one. Yeah.
PS4.
Is it on? PS4, and then of course Switch, which is what I've been playing it on. And yeah,
if someone still has a Wii U around, it's always also there.
I actually do. I still have a Wii U. I still have a couple games that are in my backlog that I haven't finished my playthroughs of. So I still have my Wii U.
Same.
Until they start porting HD Wii games to the Switch, then that's something I have to hang on to. But yeah. Anyway, so all right. Thanks a lot.
To us people that can feel things, it hurts.